Hempwood is a composite wood product made by an American company out of hemp, which is the stock of a cannabis plant. I recently made a whole video about Hempwood, which you can check out here, but this video is my interview with the founder and CEO of Hempwood, Greg Wilson. He's a super interesting guy, and we spent a lot of time talking about him, his company, and his product. We talked about a lot of different things, including how hemp was illegal for the first few years of his operation, and how he plans to grow his company. It was a great conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. Now be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts.
My name is Greg Wilson. I'm the founder of Hempwood. We've been doing similar projects like this with sustainable plant-based materials that replace the traditional hardwoods for 21 years. So me and a couple of my engineering buddies have developed things like strand-woven bamboo, as well as some plantation timbers that are fast-growing to replace old growth forest, and then doing some reclaimed woods, and now hempwood. So we've been kind of at it for a while, and when hemp became legal, it made sense because of how fast it grows. It sequesters carbon at the fastest rate of just about any plant out there.
You know, and one of the things I was wondering about was were some of the changes in the laws that were required to make a business like yours possible. So can you maybe just talk about, what were some of the laws that prevented this, and then what changed, when did it change, and how is it you're able to do what you're able to do now?
It was federally illegal when we started this thing. The company's name is Fibonacci because even though Kentucky had it legal on a state basis when we started, you weren't allowed to bank, you weren't allowed to ship it across state lines. I actually used to have to go and get a background check and a drug test with the FBI in order to make flooring. So there's been a whole lot of regulatory hurdles. We've made some friends in Washington. We've made a lot of friends in Frankfort, the capital of Kentucky. We've made some enemies in Washington too, which I don't know why, but that's a thing. So we've been taken to court a couple of times by a couple of different federal agencies, the USDA, the EPA, OSHA, Customs and Border Protection, stuff like that. So when I say taken to court, it's not like every time I had to stand in court, but there's been letters issued and people coming out to visit us and having to get different certifications and qualifications that all weren't quite there. So we were kind of the guinea pig for hemp manufacturing in the United States, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you said that you kind of use, and I've heard other interviews with you before as well, where you kind of utilize skills or methods that you learned in other bamboo, in the bamboo fiber industry, to kind of get to where you are now. So bamboo's been around for a while, right? In terms of using it for lumber and compressing it for, flooring and other things like that. So how is bamboo fiber similar to hempwood, and how is it different?
Well, hempwood and then what we call strand woven bamboo, because I was one of the founders of that industry. Back in college, I wrote the algorithm that turns a plant fiber into a wood composite. And then I did an internship for the summer after I studied in China at a bamboo mill where they were doing horizontal and vertical bamboo. And we came up with how to make it densified, which turned into strand woven bamboo. So that was 2003. The summer of 2003, we did that. And then that became a big entity. But bamboo grows in 5 years. In order to make bamboo flooring, you typically have to use mosso bamboo. The other types don't work. Mosso bamboo typically grows in the mountainous region in the middle of China because it needs the cold winters that give it that higher density. Grows in 5 years. When you harvest it, you have about 20% of it doesn't make sense to use. It just kind of doesn't work. Like harvesting a tree, the top gets too small or it has some sort of issues with it. You also have the problems of turning it into a uniform size material because you have to debark it, deskin it. You have to then break open the cell structure of it and keep it longitudinally intact. Because it does not have the strength of the hemp fiber, you have to use a stronger glue, formaldehyde based, in order to get that bonding strength. where with the hemp fiber, it allowed us to kind of create like a cheat code that we could use as a plant-based glue to fit into there. Plant-based glue does work with bamboo. It just doesn't quite have the strength that it has without it. Mm-hmm. And so you can use a clean glue that doesn't have dirty VOCs to make hempwood, whereas the bamboo all comes with formaldehyde, and people just try to hide it in the market. And they'll say, no urea formaldehyde, but it has phenol formaldehyde in it, which is also really dangerous. Another big difference is this is 100% made in America, right here in Kentucky. Mm-hmm. We're in Western Kentucky, Murray, Kentucky, where Murray State University is. That's been very helpful with all of our R&D with this for the last 6 years now. Mm-hmm. Where bamboo is traditionally made in China, now that some of the tariffs have come into play, people have started to try to use bamboo from Central and South America or Southeast Asia, Cambodia, Vietnam, those areas. It doesn't quite work as well. It's a hotter temperature bamboo, so it doesn't get that kind of old growth density that you get when you have cold winters. Something that makes you kind of strong to the core. I guess you always say that people that have to go through tough winters, whether it's people or animals, they're kind of a little bit stronger, a little bit tougher, a little bit beefier.
Yeah.
The deer and elk up in Canada are typically bigger than the ones in the United States, with the exception of the top of the Rockies and stuff where they have that big tough winter. Mm-hmm. Plants are the same thing. They just get more bigger when they have to go through larger seasonal swings. A ton of differences, but at the end of the day, the finished product that we're making is 20% harder than hickory. It has no VOCs, which means no dirty chemicals or off-gassing coming out of it, because we're using soy as our glue instead of formaldehyde. It's made here in the United States in a zero waste process, because we turn our waste into our energy here at the mill in our bioburner. So all the offcuts, all the hemp that doesn't meet compliance, whether it's moldy, whether it's got too much grass in it, any of that, we grind it up, put it in our bioburner, it spits out biochar, which is used as a fertilizer for growing our hemp the next year, which gives us our carbon negative status with zero waste. So it's the most sustainable, healthy material that's out there, and has all the kind of bells and whistles that you want for an architectural product, for doing some sort of special design product at your house. The Achilles heel is that it's not cheap, because we pay our people fair and we use quality materials right here in the United States, instead of importing it like most flooring now comes from Vietnam and Cambodia, where you can pay $1 an hour.
Right.
So,
yeah, one question I had too, because one of the comments I saw on your website, and this goes back to kind of cost, was that you had mentioned, or on the website it mentioned that one of your goals was to be competitive with oak in the U.S. And so the question I have is where are you at in that goal? And what are your thoughts in terms of like competitive pricing, and what does it look like going forward?
We're 100% competitive with American oak flooring, period, full stop. Now, you don't find American oak flooring at Lumber Liquidators, Home Depot, Floor and Decor. So we get a lot of flack of, well, why can't you be as cheap as this? And that's because they buy a shitty product from overseas, using child labor, or in the case of, and excuse my language there, I don't know exactly what your audience is like. If it's builders like me and my family, they'll appreciate it. But you know that the majority of the world's vinyl flooring just got caught for using slave labor to produce the PVC pellets for making vinyl flooring in the Islamic area in China. So the reason vinyl flooring was so popular is because everybody was making a ton of money at the expense of forced labor in the Uruguayan camps in China. And that just came out as a really big deal, and it stopped over half of the imports of vinyl flooring. So people were using a dirty chemical, using literally slave labor to make it. So big companies, and I won't name them because they'll sue me out of existence, but the biggest of the big DIY chains were called in that lawsuit, which is in front of the Senate, and made it the whole way for the federal government, as well as the largest of the largest flooring companies in the world, based in Georgia, also part of that. And it's because they could buy it for 80 cents and sell it for $5.
Mm-hmm.
That's why vinyl got out there. Big marketing budgets, because big profits on somebody else's sweat.
Yeah. Do you see your product? I mean, you're selling a direct to consumer right now. Do you see
it sell through retail?
You do. Okay. What retailers do you currently sell through?
We have 103 independently owned retailers across the United States.
Okay.
The coast, California, Texas, they all love it. The Carolinas do really well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just catching on in those areas. It's typically your wood flooring dealers, not the guys that are selling vinyl and laminate and stuff, but the ones that are selling either specialty woods or sustainable flooring options, like Go Green Flooring in Boulder, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Eco Flooring out in Santa Cruz, California. You've got Conejo just north of LA. Places that have those kind of designer-focused elements, because Hempwood's never the cheapest option, and it's never the easiest to get a hold of. So nobody just wakes up one morning and says, I need some Hempwood flooring this afternoon to go in my house. They come up with an inspiration or a reason that they want to.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's because they know that using healthy materials in your home gives you a higher cognitive ability, which actually leads to higher test scores, higher productivity, whether it's with your children at school, where we're doing multiple universities and public schools now, or whether it's in a tech office where someone's saying, I'm paying someone 6 figures to come in here, and if they have healthy materials that have a sustainable focus, it inspires them to think or create a little bit better, but also allows for cleaner breathing, which allows better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
6.4% higher test scores when using no VOC materials inside of your classroom.
Right.
And that's a fact. That's something that Ivy League schools have been doing for a long period of time. And that's kind of one of their little secrets. Exercise in the morning and don't put dirty chemicals in your classroom, and you're going to come out with better outcomes in your classes.
I want to get into kind of the chain of production, right, from seeds in the ground to the actual end product. But before, let me just go back if I can and just talk about you mentioned kind of the law changing. And I guess one question I have is around kind of regulations. Are there certain regulations that you have to follow in terms of certain procedures that you have? Is there a government agency that's responsible for regulating you? What does that look like just from a regulatory standpoint?
So the growing of the hemp still has regulation around it. We're hoping that this new farm bill will make that a little bit cleaner and clearer for our growers like myself, like the Lowe's, like the Kelly Farms, all of those that are actually out there doing it, because you got to get a background check. You got to get fingerprinted.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay $500 to get a permit. And then you got to pay $50 or $100 to get testing done each time you go to harvest. So it becomes a cumbersome process to grow hemp.
Mm-hmm.
As far as producing hempwood flooring, we are part of a program. We do that voluntarily. And that's because we got sued by the USDA. And the outcome of the USDA court case in 2020 was that hempwood is the same as a canvas sack or hemp rope, and therefore does not fall into the 1970 Controlled Substance Act, nor the 2014 or 18 Farm Bill. So at our actual 2 facilities here in Kentucky, we do not have to join the hemp program, but they've been so helpful to us that we do join the program, especially if someone came out here and some seeds somehow fell out of a bale or one of the bags leaked or something like that, and you start getting these little hitchhiker plants around the mill, mm-hmm. then we would be breaking the law, mm-hmm. because we would be cultivating a controlled substance even though it's basically ditchweed at that point.
Yeah. So the variety of hemp that you grow, how is it the same or different than what's grown for like medicinal marijuana and things like that?
Medicinal marijuana is genetically modified hemp.
Okay.
All the hippies out there that want to say, "Oh, we're against GMOs, but we love good weed." What do you think you're doing there? It's a plant that's been genetically modified to get you high. So it's kind of an oxymoron. What they do is they find certain strands that have certain attributes. They cultivate those to amplify that attribute and then breed it for generations to get it to have flower that has THC or CBD in it. And then they keep it separate from the males. So whenever the female goes to breed, if she cannot find pollen from a male, then she is going to create these different enzymes, which turn into THC or CBD. Our stuff, we plant 1 million plants an acre, just like a row crop wheat drill, 7-inch wide. Let nature take its course. So the THC, CBD, the more you let nature take its course, the less it has those attributes that they're breeding it to have. And so cannabis, if you want it to be strong, you have to grow it in a laboratory or in a house in an enclosed structure. Hemp, if you want it to be strong, you have to grow it inside of a greenhouse. If you're growing it outside in a field, a bird can fly from one field to the next field, drop some pollen, ruin your crop. Or you can have wind that blows. Some people say 1 mile, some people say 10 miles. But if there's a male plant within some sort of a pollination kind of circumference of the field, it can ruin your crop. Mm-hmm. So most of the THC, CBD, actually the best thing that happened for the THC market, the marijuana market, was making hemp illegal, because then guys could try to grow it in their barns and could out in California growing it in the tops of trees, and they're not worried about a hemp farmer's crop blowing across it.
Right. That's interesting.
It's pretty crazy when people are like, "Oh, well, your hemp crop is gonna test hot for THC," and you're like, "Come out and try it." Like what we're doing here, it actually prevents anyone from growing marijuana within a couple miles of any of our fields. Yeah, because they're not going to make any money out of it.
So let's then talk about kind of production, because some of the questions I have is I know it's a fast growing crop, but maybe talk me through like how long does it take from planting to where you can harvest it, and then how much do you actually need to because it's compressed, right? So how much do you actually need to harvest in order to create a standard board, and maybe just talk me through the process, how your manufacturing operates and how that works.
Easy, man. All day, every day. So the hemp comes into our facility in round bales typically. Our area gets a lot of rain, so square bales are not an existing piece of equipment in the farmer's toolbox. So round bales allow it to rain a little bit more and it rolls off the side rather than sits flat and soaks in. Mm-hmm. So it comes in a round bale. We stab a spike right through the center of it, and we put it on the bale unrolling machine that we built here in-house. Call it the toilet paper unroller. It actually just has a giant arm that comes down and rolls the hemp bale. So it pulls off the same way that it went up, that it went on. Goes through a crushing machine. Once we crush open the hemp stalk, then we weigh it to a certain size. We put it into a wrap and soak it into our soy-based glue. Once we soak it into that soy-based glue, we put it into dryers that are converted old tobacco barns. We took the guts from tobacco barns, put them into rail cars, and we hooked up the radiators from those old tobacco barns with the fans blowing across. So we hooked it up to a renewable energy system that we create in-house. So we use our waste hemp to heat a fluid. The fluid goes through the radiators. The fans blow across the radiators, and that's our circulating hot air to dry it out. So we can then weigh it to 95 pounds per block and then press it into a 6x6 by 6 feet long using 3,000 tons of pressure. We press it into these logs. These logs go into an oven, and they are baked overnight, kind of like a loaf of bread, 12 hours. They're cooked, and the thermal energy to run that oven is also based off of our waste, our bioburner. They come out, you open up the metal mold that they're inside of, and then you let it rest for 2 weeks, stabilizing, and then we put it on our CNC 17-foot band saws and start cutting it. You just type in what you want all your cuts to be, and that's what comes out of it. You take it, you stack it, you dry it using our renewable energy here. One wing of our building we built facing east, so the sun comes up, heats that room first. It has airflow that goes through it. We also have our dust collection systems in that wing of the building, so it dehumidifies the air. Mm-hmm. So you can have dehumidified moving air that is heated with your sun, your solar, or it also in the wintertime has a kick-in so you can get some of your bioburner heat through the radiators in that wing of the building. Mm-hmm. Dry it out. It takes about between 5 and 10 days to dry it with that method. Temperature is always between 80 and 100 degrees. It's basically like a natural kiln. Then we take those, we lay it up on Pure Bond plywood, which is kind of our big brothers. They're out of West Virginia. They use FSC certified plywood that has the same soy-based glue. We're very similar. We glue it onto the top of that, and that makes it, because it's so hard, it's difficult as a solid to nail it. And then because it's a solid, if you put it on grade slab, so slab on grade, mm-hmm. hydrostatic pressure causes solid wood to buckle. Not all the time, but sometimes. That's a big claim for solid wood. But if you put it in an engineered format, never an issue. Never once have we had a buckling claim. Mm. So put it in that engineered format. We cut the tongue and groove. You got to use diamond tooling because of how strong it is, those hemp fibers in there. Mm-hmm. Cut it on all 4 sides, wood fill it, sand it, and send it through our coating line. Altogether, it takes about 20 to 24 people to make the product. We've got about 4 or 5 people in the office doing sales, marketing, those type of things. Mm-hmm. And we have all the certifications as being a bio-preferred product, which is now required by the federal government, at least to keep track of how much bio-preferred you use, as well as we have the carbon negative status with our LCAs and our EPDs. We don't have fire retardant. So we have class 1 fire rating of 0.93, so double the class 1 requirement, meaning you can put it literally in a fire escape if you want to. And it's 20% harder than hickory. So your high traffic areas were the only natural option. We've got one of our friends has a company called Nidri. Nidri does acrylic impregnated oak flooring for commercial applications. They're kind of the big kid on the block for doing those high-end architectural projects and stuff because they put acrylic in it, makes it a lot harder, a lot more water resistant. Mm-hmm. Well, we did it, but without having to use a bunch of dirty chemicals. So high traffic commercial, that's our go-to. People that want to have a healthy, made in America, durable product that's the most sustainable option out there, that's what we got. Yeah. But people are always looking for how this material can fit into their desired project. So it's like if you're working with DIYers, which it sounds like that's your market, mm-hmm. somebody gets inspired and wants to have their home office with a hempwood floor or a hempwood desk. Those are the type of customers. We do have some people that do whole houses, but for the most part, it's somebody's show offer where they would put oak because people don't put it in basements that much. They go for a cheap option. Mm-hmm. People typically, not everywhere, but a lot of the time, they want to have something warmer like carpet in their bedrooms. So your living room, dining room, kitchens, offices, things like that is typically where it goes. Your great rooms, people put it in wine cellars as accent walls. People put it in offices and retail stores and things like that. Schools are loving it because they get that carbon negative status with all the 14 lead points that we can get for them, mm-hmm. which is like more than double what the other stuff gets. Yeah. And somehow, some way, the kids can't beat it up where they said kids are even destroying tile and they're destroying just about anything you can put into the schools. And we've had it in there for a couple of years. And they're like, yes, somehow, some way, the kids, I guess they're not allowed to bring pocket knives, so they can't whittle it away. It tends to take all their other abuse.
Yeah. Talk to me about how you've grown and is the business growing? And have you maybe even benefited from some of the kind of craziness in the wood or lumber markets as of the past couple of years, or has that not affected you at all?
We've definitely doubled every single year that we've been in business. So that's a true growth story. I can say that has worked. We continue to be an engineer. I tend to focus more on our production than on our sales. Mm-hmm. And so the minute we hit some sort of a milestone, then all of a sudden I build another mill, like we built our second mill, making the flooring, or we try to expand to something else. And that's what keeps the growth story going, but doesn't keep the gross revenue or gross margins going. Mm-hmm. So the crazy price in lumber was not on the supply side. It was all demand focused. Mm-hmm. When we buy our truckloads of plywood, the whole way through that process, they didn't change 1 penny from the plywood mill. But I saw those same sheets that were coming from the same mill that we got. One of our trucks got into a wreck, and they wouldn't release the goods until insurance figured out this whole 18-wheeler full of plywood, $30,000. So we had to buy the same material from our local lumber shop. Mm. The exact same material that we were buying was 3 times the price of what we pay for it by the truckload at our local lumber place. And I said, hey, what's the deal with this? And they said, supply and demand. So if it didn't change 1 penny at the mill, it was all the middlemen and in-betweeners in between the customers. Mm-hmm. But it did cause a lot more people to call and ask us about plywood. Mm-hmm. Same way with eggs. People went nuts about chicken eggs, right? Yeah. Chickens didn't stop laying eggs. There are a few less chickens out there to lay eggs. Uh-huh. And then the price doubled or tripled. What for? Just because hysteria. Same thing with Bitcoin. What do you use Bitcoin for? Getting around paying taxes. Yeah. Why does it triple every other year and then get cut in half? Oh, speculators. The speculators in the timber industry, the speculators in the oil industry are all taking advantage of COVID and the extra dollars that customer had. When somebody can get $10 instead of $8, they do it. Yeah. Where here, we've reduced our cost and we've passed that on to our customer. And so as we're getting to a point where we're doing a high enough volume, we now can grade it into Premium Select, which is our commercial grade. That's what we were always doing. We now have a common grade, which works a lot better for some of your DIYers or some people that want to put it in their house, but maybe the price point doesn't work.
Sorry, what's the difference between your common grade and your premium grade? How is that different?
So we use NWFA, North American Wood Flooring Association standards, which is size, which is knots, which is color variation, and which is character. So typically Premium Select goes into your high-end flooring and furniture grade for oak or for Hempwood. It has knots not more than every 36 inches. It has the full wide plank width of 5 inches, longer planks, and it has light and medium color variation. In the common grade, you can have light, medium, and dark. You're allowed to have more knots in it. And we typically have a 4 or 4.5 inch wide for our common grade. Whenever we put it through the machines, if it doesn't mill out to get the tongue and groove for the full width, you put it into the common grade section, you run it back through. We sell that stuff at 25% less expensive, the same way that wood does. And we only sell that direct, kind of as a factory direct option, mm-hmm. because we can't control how much of it is coming through. When you cut open a log, you got to sort it into select and common. Mm-hmm. Now we even have a rustic grade that we're doing into like a reclaim. You can call it character grade or cabin grade or rustic grade. The stuff that doesn't hit into our common grade, we're now doing high enough volumes that we're starting to get some of this and saying, well, this makes pretty good accent walls, or things of that nature. If somebody wants to put it into a hunting cabin, somebody wants to have that barnwood look, we can get that done. And that stuff has extreme color variation. It'll have light and dark inside of the same board, like kind of, your veins when you see wood that'll have almost like a spalted maple that'll have like a dark vein running the whole way through it, all of that. We're starting to do high enough volumes that we're seeing some of that we're eyeballing whether that should be a product line we do. Okay. Rather than we turn it into our energy right now.
Yeah. Okay. So, who do you see as kind of your competitors? I mean, you've got, other wood flooring companies, of course, but are there any kind of direct competitors? Are there any other people that are using hemp in the way that you're using it and, competing directly with you? Or are you guys the only ones that are out there doing this?
We're the only ones in the world making hempwood. So instead of saying competitors, industry leaders. And so your industry leaders in what we're doing would be, in our region, Somerset Flooring is the largest wood flooring company, but they're our buddies. They tried to buy us. And we just kind of said, we don't need to do that. You've got Graph, you've got Middle Tennessee Lumber, you've got Tennessee Hardwood. Right in our area, there's a whole lot of these small to medium size wood flooring mills that are right here. But they're all our buddies. I mean, we'll go ahead and have a glass of bourbon together whenever we go to or I'll have bourbon, they'll have whiskey if they're from Tennessee when we go to the trade shows and stuff, and just kind of talk about what's going on. Nidri, we actually go after the same commercial projects, and we're friends with the owners. And so we'll call each other and be like, oh, hey, I think this is a good one for you. I mean, we're not like colluding to jack up prices or anything. We're just saying, hey, look, this is going into somebody who's trying to be kind of more classical, sophisticated. I think it's more of a acrylic impregnated oak product. Whereas this commercial build, like Nike we're doing some stuff with, is looking to go after the new futuristic carbon negative promise that they've done. And that would be more of a hempwood product. Mm-hmm. So locally, we all get along. Internationally, the stuff that I don't like or don't get along with is the people that break the rules, that you're lumber liquidators. They're a miserable brand to work with. You know why? Because all they care about is a dollar.
Yeah.
And they keep getting caught selling shitty products that they lie to their customers about because it's more profitable. Mm-hmm. And if you look at their stock price, it shows that customers don't trust them anymore because they're sneaking formaldehyde into their products and telling them it's not. They're buying from illegal sources of lumber. Like they're still buying Russian wood, and they're just sending it through Vietnam. So those type of things, I don't got the time of day for them because why would you sacrifice what you're doing or what you believe in to make an extra buck? Dollar's a piece of paper. It's a way of tracking your energy that goes into what you're doing. And when you try to shortcut it to get more dollars by buying it somewhere where you underpay somebody like the vinyl that we talked about earlier, what are you teaching your kids?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What are you saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the same time, you can't get by without making money, right? And, one of the things, for me, as I look at kind of your product, it is expensive, right? From like a woodworker standpoint. And I imagine you're probably selling more flooring than you are selling, bulb lengths or pieces of wood for woodworkers. But I mean, what are you doing to get costs down? I mean, one of the things I saw just from some of the promotional videos you had is the process does seem to be very labor intensive. Are you working on, making changes to production to make it more efficient, to get costs down? And, what ways are you looking at doing that to make it more affordable for kind of the end consumer?
We have automated our costs down 20% every year. So we move so fast as a small business. This is my 8th company I've started, all around inventing new stuff, including the breathalyzer used in police departments. But so we've automated our costs down 20% every year. And we have passed on as much of that to the customer as we can every single year while still keeping the lights on here. Mm-hmm. So Hempwood used to cost $14 a square foot. Now it costs you 6 to 10 for flooring. And so when you think about what's actually happened there in a short period of time, say 4 years, while the price of wood for everything else has gone bonkers, up, down, all around, mine, I just say, we are automating the process and engineering solutions in order to make it fit more people. And so if somebody calls us and tells us what their project is, then we can make it try to fit what their budget is. And it's the same way for your turning blanks. It's the same way for your lumber for building stuff. If you call us and tell us what your project is, then we can recommend the most cost and time efficient product that's out there. Mm-hmm. And you have to think a little bit differently. Like artisans and craftsmen typically are thinking about what's the best utilization of their time. And the reality is we sell S4S lumber. So if you try to compare us to lumber that comes out of a mill that is not kiln dried, that is not S4S finished on 4 sides, then yeah, there is no comparison. Because you can buy oak at $2, $3, $4, $5 a board foot. Mm-hmm. But then when you say, I want a select grade, kiln dried S4S, same price.
Right.
So it's what you compare it to. Mm-hmm. If you're walking into Home Depot and say a 2x4 cost me $6, why don't you make that? And I say, because it can't. But if you say, I'm looking to do this flooring project or this desk or table in my house, a lot of people that are buying our furniture board, we created this to make it easier for them to fit into their process. We're doing a solid 3-layer hempwood panel. And so you can literally rip that down, cut it down, or have us cut it into the size that you want. Mm-hmm. And the material is expensive, except for all you got to do is, or have us do, is bevel the edges and put sealer and coating on it. And then all of a sudden, your shop time to convert panels with lumber into a table like the one you see right here behind me there, mm-hmm. That thing, even though the material is less expensive because it's a plywood backer with a hempwood face and then a solid wood apron around it, if you're getting this panel that costs $1,000, but you can cut it into 2 of those and you don't have to join glue, wood fill, sand, stain, right. Coat. All of a sudden, we've got people putting them into hotels and they say that the break-even point is if your shop rate is $80 an hour, you might as well buy the solid panel because you're not putting in all of your shop time to convert it into that style.
Right.
So just being creative and smart about it, you can get what you want with using hempwood and have it directly comparable to a domestic hardwood. All you got to do is call and tell us about your project, mm-hmm. and we'll figure out how to make it work. Whether it's the different grades of wood, whether it's the different sizes of wood, or whether it's the different profiles, thicknesses, things like that. Because hempwood being stronger than your traditional woods means that you could use a thinner piece of hempwood.
Mm-hmm. So just thinking through again from a woodworking standpoint, you mentioned it's harder than hickory. I mean, hickory can be really tough on your tools. So if you're say using a rough piece of, I mean, it's S4S, but if you're shaping it into something, a piece of wood, or say, have a bowl blank and you're turning a bowl, how does it impact your tools? Is it tough to cut? Is it hard like, hickory and other, tough woods like that? What is it like to actually work? And I, like I said, I do have some samples. I haven't worked through them yet, but I'm planning on doing that here soon. So I'll maybe answer my own question, but maybe just tell me from your perspective what it's like to work with it.
Pain in the ass.
Okay.
It's so hard and dense, and it has the hemp fibers in there. You need to use carbide or not diamond tooling. The carbide you're going to shape, or you're going to sharpen more often. And I can say that it's like having small pieces of hemp rope pressed inside of a 200-year-old Brazilian cherry. And that's what gives it its beauty. That's what gives it its story. That's what gives it its final attributes. But at the same time, you're working with one of the hardest wood materials out there. So you're going to get what you pay for there.
Mm-hmm.
It is by no means similar to using poplar or pine. It's 20% harder than hickory. So think about how hard hickory is on your tools.
Mm-hmm.
Add 20%. There
Okay.
you go.
All right.
Use finish trim blades. If you're using chop saws, table saws, all that.
Mm-hmm.
More teeth, the better. Carbide is necessary. You're going to be sharpening them more often. But that's why it's so good for flat surfaces.
Right.
Nobody wants to use softwood. People just use softwood because it's cheap.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a fair assessment is, given the option to frame a house with oak or pine, which one do you think is going to last longer?
Right.
Yep. The same way with making a table. Nobody wants a pine table.
Right.
But a pine table costs a quarter of the price of an oak table.
Right. So one other question I had too is just thinking through that there are other companies that do, panels of bamboo, right, for structural purposes. Do you ever foresee using hempwood for structural panels, let's say, or anything like that? Or is the cost just too high for something like that?
Yeah. So the company that I started is the world's largest bamboo company. Oh, they acquired mine. And we do make structural panels there. So if you see structural panels, there's a pretty good chance it's coming from that company.
Oh, what's the name of the company?
Yongyu Home Furnishings.
Okay.
It's on the Shenzhen Stock Exchange. Got about 11,000 employees.
Okay.
It does all of your bamboo flooring that you see at all box shops in the United States and 43% of the world's bamboo flooring. It also does the decking. It makes all the Cali bamboo, Home Depot, Lowe's, Floor & Decor, Menards, Smith & Fong, Maso, Daso, all come from there.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all brands that are made by the same place. So we do have a patent and a process on a plant-based glue for a structural hempwood and a trademark on it. We call it OHB, Orient Hempwood.
Okay.
And so there's been a few people that have kind of tested copying us. They didn't want to play nice, so the lawyers had to talk to them, and they backed off, including some large universities, as well as a couple of different players. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but there's a lot of people that try to sneak in and steal your thunder.
Mm-hmm.
Right now it's going through code compliance. In 2025, we will have some structural panels and beams that are coming out of it.
Okay.
You're going to have to be creative with what you compare it to, price-wise.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the downfall, because hemp costs more than wood chip, because OSB is made out of the waste when you clear cut a forest. They chip it up, send it to the OSB mill, and it costs $100 a ton. The oak that comes out of that place costs $500 a ton.
Mm-hmm.
So your oak log's $500. Your chipped up, bone dry poplar or pine chips that make OSB are $100. So we're going to have to do some engineering and maneuvering in there to get it to work.
Yeah.
But you have to go with the direct sales or direct to builder sales, direct to woodworker sales, instead of going through a retail store for that.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll need to be relying upon specialty products, because you're never going to compete with OSB at Home Depot, because, Lord knows what sort of glue or whatever went into that.
Right.
But you will be able to compete with sustainable carbon negative houses that want to do SIPS panels.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're attacking the labor of stick framing a house, not attacking the cost of the material.
Right.
Because when you build a house, 25% of the cost of building a house is materials. You got the rest of it is your laborers and overheads and utility costs and equipment and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it will fit into those scenarios. I don't think it'll ever be cheaper than making OSB.
Right.
I think that's a little bit of a pipe dream from the people that are playing with his cousin. But you'll be able to make it somewhat competitive if we can increase the value of the top of the plant. And that way the bottom of the plant becomes a secondary product, like those wood chips.
Right.
So if people really start eating hemp seeds, or the flower that doesn't have the CBD THC becomes a value generator. Because you're planting 1 million plants an acre, you can't really make it have those special attributes. Then the bottom of the plant becomes a byproduct.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in business.
Yeah.
So we're waiting on the code and waiting on the industry and waiting on the market.
So I mean, things could change, right? Things could change that make some of your product more valuable, or some of your waste product more valuable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In addition, we've found that the product is 20% stronger because of the hemp fibers in it. And so the idea is you could use 20% thinner material.
I see. Yeah.
So instead of using a 1/2 inch, you could get into a heavy 3/8, something like that.
Yeah.
Or for your subfloor, your sub roof, you could get into something a little bit thinner there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And still get your same load bearing capability in your spans and everything.
Right. Okay. I just have a couple of last questions here. So one is, kind of looking at some of the materials you guys have, some of the videos you have online of your production and all that. One thing I had curiosity on is, what does it smell like when you're there? What does the factory smell like in the production? Does it have a distinct smell?
It does. It smells natural. It doesn't smell like cannabis.
Okay.
It smells more like the soy flour we use in the glue.
Okay.
And so it smells like a farm.
In my mind, I thought it smelled like hay. It looked like it smelled like grass to me, is what I thought.
Yep, you are correct. That's
Okay.
what a farm smells like. Not like fresh cut grass in your yard, but more like hay in the field, because you're using the hemp straw, you're using the ground up soy protein.
Okay, great. And then, just to kind of close things off here, what kind of message would you have to like potential, buyers of your product? Somebody who's looking at it, who's maybe never heard of it before and is seeing this for the first time, somebody who maybe is looking at it from a woodworking standpoint, what would you say to them in terms of why they should use Hempwood?
So do a little bit of research online. Make sure it came from us, because there's a lot of people that say a lot of stuff about hemp products on the internet to get hype. So do a little research on the internet, go to the website and get a sample pack. And then after you get that sample pack, you'll be able to see it, touch it, feel it, just like you did. And then give us a call or send us an email, and we'll either have someone reach out to you, or you can give us a call and talk to you direct. Our sales team, bunch of professionals here, will be able to kind of talk you through what you should or shouldn't get and how to make it work, because it works a lot better and easier if we remove as many of those variables as possible. So whenever somebody says, I'm going to buy a log and cut it, they're going to fail. It's stronger than your saw. Mm-hmm. Just the way it is. Most people that have a big saw like to think they can do whatever they want to cutting it, and then they call back and yell at us saying, I can't believe you did that to me. I'm like, look, I told you. Mm-hmm. Have us cut the wood for you. Have us S4S it for you. Have us get it as close to what you needed or wanted as possible, because hempwood doesn't plane. It's too strong to go through a planer. So we put it through a sander sizer at our mill. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of people that have the size of sanders that we have, with the amount of vigor that they can really bite into it.
Right.
So we hit it with a 60, 80, 120 as our sizer. Our tolerance on our 17-foot band saws is 0.1 of a millimeter. So we're cutting it, then drying it, and then sanding it to get it to the size you want or need in a batch system, which is why it's not mass produced, because if we want to make sure that that sander is actually from the exact same setting when you're throwing through all the pieces, that way each board that comes out to you. Same way with the flooring. We make all of it, especially in the flooring, in 2,500 square foot batches. You rip down the plywood, you cut the top layers, you mash those up to the same length. You put them through the molder at the same time. You put them through the end matcher at the same time. And then you let them sit there until you got an order. And you stack them out and have fans blowing on them. That way it's always acclimating and drying out and getting used to each other, so you don't have your bowing and cupping and warping and buckling. And then we throw them through the sander whenever we get an order and put it in the coating line all at the same time. So you try to batch it together as much as possible, so you have the same hemp that was processed at the same time with, I mean, if you're into woodworking, you can know there's 54-inch wide belt sanders, like the triple head like we have. One day, if one side is a little bit out of kilter, then it could be a little bit different than the next week after you tighten the equipment back up.
Right.
But if you put it all through with the exact same day, it all matches together. So just talk to us. We can work your way through it. And then it becomes much easier, a lot less frustrating to make something out of it. And then what you're doing is you're paying us at Kentucky wages to prep the material, getting it as close to what you need. And where are you at?
Oh, I'm in Texas.
Okay. Which part of Texas?
DFW area.
So I'm sure Dallas wages are higher than Murray, Kentucky wages.
Right.
So get that material, like the S4S scenario. The number one complaint we get is, why is it so expensive? We say, it's S4S. And they say, what's that? You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
If you don't understand S4S, you know, kiln dried S4S costs more, but it's ready to go out of your box. At least for the most part of putting it together. Just like our flooring, because we have to run it through face up to use the plywood as the backer, and then we use the sander because you can't mold it. Not molding, sorry. You can't put it through a planer. We run it face up, and then we sand all of our site finished floor to the exact same tolerance. So when you install a Hempwood site finished floor, it doesn't have the uneven boards there.
Right.
It's, unless you get it real messy or dirty, it's ready to put your sealer coat, and then you do a light sand to get your grain pop off. Second sealer, 2 coats of top coat. So it gets it as close and ready for the customers as possible to remove people saying, well, that's so dense, it ate up so much of my sandpaper. Let us eat that bird. And so our site finished floor is site finished but sanded to spec, ready to go, which saves you a sanding cost of, say, 50 cents a square foot when people sell the cheaper or site finished oak flooring that you have to go then and take off a 0.5 millimeter with your orbital sander or your belt sander.
Right.
So we try to make it as turnkey out of the box as possible for what you're doing. And talking to one of us here saying, I want to make a desk. And we'll say, all right, do you want to use the solid panel? It's going to have a lot less cost on your side, but it's going to have a higher material cost. Or do you want to buy the plywood backed veneer top, but then you're going to have to miter your edges and put your solid wood and glue it and then nail it and then wood fill it and then sand it before it's ready to get your sealing and coating.
Right.
And if you're DIY, buy the cheaper material, do it yourself in the garage. It's cool. It's fun. A lot of times a grandfather does it with his grandson because the grandson thinks hemp is cool and the grandfather just wants to do woodworking with his grandson. Same way with farming. The grandfather farms with his grandson because his grandson comes and says, hey, Pat, at school they told me that you can grow hemp. Is that something we can do on our farm? And the grandfather's like, anything to get my grandson to, you know what I mean, spend some time on the farm with me. Instead of running off to the city.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Well, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of sit me down and talk me through the process and the company. I mean, it sounds like you guys have a really great product, has a lot of, great benefits. It sounds like your company's growing. So, congratulations on creating a great brand and a great product.
What we need is people like you to tell everybody about it.
That's right.
Tell people to check out hempwood.com. If they want to get some inspirations for what they're working on, go to Instagram, and you can always see some sort of cool stuff happening on the organic farm or around the shop or what our customers are making. And if you do make something, send it to us or tag us, and we'll share it with the world. Give you credit for it.
That's great. All right. Thanks so much, Greg. Appreciate it. Have a good one.